Welcome back to the live stream. I think I have a pretty good show planned for you today, and we're going to get right into it. I've divided this into a few segments. And the first segment is going to be regarding the lack of DNA at the crime scene. So I've decided to feature a really great editorial, a really well done editorial that I listened to recently by Medgyn Kelley. So we're going through the majority of this interview, but I'm breaking it up into segments and I'm sort of jumping around. And I want to start with the largest clip we're going to play right now, which is a 10-minute segment. And this is regarding the lack of DNA. And then when we're done with that, I'm going to bring up another smaller creator and show how he kind of demonstrates how the person who committed these crimes might have done it. So here we go.
There should be hair strands. If she didn't pull his hair, did she punch him? There should be a DNA transfer onto the knuckles of her hand. I just don't see any way, he says, that someone could actively resist in such a way that there would not be any DNA of the perpetrator.
I'm going to rewind that a little.
Not one of his hairs, not any of. We're able to match that touch.
Okay, we're going to go to right here. Sorry about
that. Make a just verdict in this case, end quote. One family was supportive of the demolition, Ethan Chapin's. He was a triplet, and both of his siblings still attend the University of Idaho. Can you imagine them having to go buy the house? His parents said getting rid of this house was for the good of the university and for the community of Moscow. Many of you wrote in to ask also about the DNA evidence. Remember, as far as we know, the police found just a single tiny sample of touch DNA, which is not the best form of DNA. They found it on the knife sheath found next to one of the victims and were able to match that touch DNA to Kohberger using something called investigative genetic genealogy, or IgG. They traced the DNA by matching it to someone in the Kohberger family, then zeroed in on Bryan Kohberger after realizing that it likely came from a relative of a man named Michael Kohberger, Bryan's dad, who cops then obtained DNA from. Actually, they went through his garbage, which is legal, and figured out that there was some sort of a match. They actually, at that point, could tell that Michael's son was a match to the touch DNA. One viewer, Bill, asked us over email, how did Bryan leave no DNA at the crime scene? Not one of his hairs? Not any of his saliva or blood? It's a good question. It was just one dot of touch DNA on the knife sheath snap. That's it? In a crime this gruesome and bloody? We're wondering the same thing. Scott, another viewer, added, given the reports that Kaylee Gonsalves appeared to have fought back during the attack, he writes, quote, there must be some DNA under fingernails. Where is it? If she didn't scratch him, did she pull his hair? There should be hair strands. If she didn't pull his hair, did she punch him? There should be a DNA transfer onto the knuckles of her hand. I just don't see any way, he says, that someone could actively resist in such a way that there would not be any DNA of the perpetrator. Others asked about the apparent lack of DNA in Kohberger's car, Bryan Kohberger's car, while some emailed wondering about reports that DNA from other males had been found at or around the scene of the crime. We're going to take these questions one by one. First, we should clarify that the police at this point are no longer relying on just the genetic genealogy match from Kohberger's father.
Okay, I'm going to make a point. I'm just going to pause it right there just because I think that this point comes up a lot. So just to reiterate, the original match, which led them to the father, they don't use that match anymore. They got a full-fledged sample from a buccal cheek swab, which is what they're matching now, just so nobody thinks that they're taking that the 23andMe type.
As soon as Bryan Kohberger was arrested, his cheek was swabbed, and that DNA sample was tested against the touch DNA on the knife sheath, according to the police affidavit. The police adding it is no longer a question that it was Bryan Kohberger's touch DNA on that knife sheath. As for Bill's questions about the DNA at the crime scene, that is a mystery. As far as what's been reported There was no other DNA of Bryan Kohberger's found at the scene or on any of the bodies. I know, it's hard to believe. Maybe there is, and they just haven't told us. The prosecutors might have more, but so far, neither the prosecution nor the defense is saying there's anything more than this touch DNA. This is going to be a big question at trial, but all reports we have seen so far point to the DNA on the knife sheath as being the prime, and it appears for now the only evidence that will be presented to the jury when it comes to DNA. Remember, it's believed that the killer, Kohberger, allegedly wore protective clothing, a mask, and probably, almost certainly, gloves. Then there's the question about the lack of DNA in Kohberger's car. That one has a bit more of an explanation. Kohberger was arrested more than 6 weeks after the murders took place. He drove that car across the country with his father, Michael, going home for Christmas break 1 month after the murders. While in Pennsylvania, reports are he was seen getting the car cleaned, including one report saying he had used bleach.
Okay, let's stop there just for 1 second. So aside from DNA that might have been in there nearly 6 weeks after the unalivings, we also learned something, our podcast learned something via our research, which is there is a disintegration of DNA over time. So if it's outside, it disintegrates really fast, and inside it has an expiration date as well. And that's not to say that something can't be contained inside of something, and different types of DNA have different expiration dates. But as far as touch DNA or contact DNA that might have been like on the buckle, the seatbelt, like when it goes back into the seat thing, those things have an expiration date, and 6 months later, they might not be detectable. Apparently with DNA, you don't even need to wash your car. And I'm sorry, I paused for a second because your profile picture is adorable. But yeah, apparently you don't even need to, because some of these contact DNAs will disintegrate on their own. I hope you didn't fall asleep, Mike. All right, we'll keep going. And then I'm going to show you a video that talks, a really interesting video that I think will shed some more light on.
All of this is believed to have happened while cops had their eye on Kohberger, but before they could get their hands on the car itself. It's possible that the cops went and retrieved some clues or discovered some evidence from the facility where Kohberger cleaned the car, like after he left. But if they did that, it hasn't been made public. If they did not do that, then it appears to be the case that they watched him clean the car, potentially destroying evidence, and did zero about it. The car is in police custody now, and they may have found DNA evidence that has not been publicly disclosed. They're definitely ripping that car apart. We doubt it, however, because the defense is saying publicly that the police found no DNA in the car. The question about the other male DNA found at and around the house is an intriguing one. All right, this is one of the other questions, as I mentioned. In a June 23 filing, one of Kohberger's defense attorneys, J. Weston Logsden, wrote about the existence of other male DNA found at the scene. Now, keep in mind, this is a defense lawyer. Here's how he described things. Quote, by December 17th, 2022, lab analysts were aware of 2 additional males' DNA within the house where the deceased were located, and another unknown male DNA on a glove found outside the residence on November 20th, 2022. To this date, the defense is unaware of what sort of testing, if any, was conducted on these samples, other than the STR DNA profiles.
Okay.
Further, these 3...
I'm going to stop right there, because it takes several more minutes for her to explain this. So I'm just going to explain what she said. So essentially she was saying that they are never stating where these DNAs were found. So they were found in the vicinity, but they weren't necessarily found right where the criminal activity happened. For example, and this is just a hypothetical or general example, it could be like somebody was drinking a water bottle, put the cap back on, left it on the bureau coming into the room, or on a shelf, or on the dresser. It could be something like that. It could be anything. It could be something from the waste bin in Maddie's room. It could be It could be anything, a washcloth. I think essentially what they were doing was once they found the DNA on the knife sheath, they wanted to make sure those other samples in the room didn't match it. And when they didn't, then it was irrelevant because they had to target on this one thing. I'm assuming, making assumptions for them. But what baffles me is that in order to have them actually be unknown, there has to be some sort of workup. They had to have been ran through CODIS as far as I know, because they were ran through CODIS and they were found to be unknown male DNA. So that means that there's some sort of workup on this DNA. And that's what I always was wondering is like, well, if they were able to tell they were unknown and they made a workup on them to put them through CODIS to find out they were unknown, what happened to that workup? And why can't those profiles be provided to defense? Hey, Jeff. His wording within the house where the deceased were located could have been better, right? Can be interpreted a couple ways, close to victims or close to the house, right? Anything we're saying is a guess. Hey, Beth. So you're, Jeff, I know you're, I don't know if you guys are friends, but I know you guys do, or you know each other, is Mark B. He has a video that we've referenced a lot over the last 5 months called The Kill Kit. Hey, full screen. And I thought I'd show it to you. It's a 6-minute video. It's worth the watch. Now, I have to give a disclaimer before I show this. It's not necessarily saying this is exactly what happened. Basically, it's a thought-provoking video. It's showing what a kill kit might be, or using a kill kit in a home, how you might be able to use it to contain DNA. Would it look like this? I don't think Mark B is trying to say that a kill kit would necessarily look like this, but these are some ideas of how it might be done. Something was done to contain that DNA. So let's see what Mark has to say, and I'll shut up.
Okay, Dylan's room.
Oh, it's really quiet.
6 feet away. That's the sliding glass door. She said he walked towards the sliding glass door. So, according to this theory, he stopped in the kitchen and got undressed. A lot of people think the kitchen's dark, but remember, there's a good vibes lighting in the living room, and it might be reflecting here, or there could be some other source of light also. And once we're done here, we're going to go out to the car, which is about 4 to 5 car lengths away. When the killer first came in, he left that plastic sheeting right by the door. And one last thing before we get going.
Okay, so that actually makes sense. So he would have to preemptively know he was going to do this. One other thing I want to bring up is I need to go back and look at the wording of the PCA, but my understanding, and it was brought to my attention when I was reading those Papa Rogers posts, is that the sliding glass door was left open the entire time. And that may have been one of the reasons why Xana came out of the room, because we don't know why she came out of the room. Her DoorDash was earlier. That would also provide a lighting here. Let me go on so you guys can hear what Mark has to say. I don't want to keep pausing it and ruining his video.
This outfit is waterproof, and here's a sample of it. I put some Tabasco sauce on here. This is the exterior of the lower pant leg. And right with my fingers here, I dabbed water on the outside, kept dabbing and dabbing to see, and it's completely waterproof. So what you're going to see on the inside is just the color from the exterior. It actually did not penetrate. So that is just the color from the outside of the pant leg on the Tabasco. Okay, here goes.
just pausing for a second because I'll point out this is a 6-minute video and Mark is moving slow, but Mark is just a normal guy. If you were in the heat of the moment with adrenaline, this would definitely be moving faster. He's just going slow so he can see all the working parts.
Shower cap. Okay, keep in mind right now, he's naked except for socks, gloves, shower cap, mask. Second pair of gloves off, one pair of gloves remaining. Hand inside.
I just wanted to put up this comment that Jeff just made in the live chat. Early on, it was interesting to me that BK had no shower curtain in the apartment. Just let that sink in for a second.
Shoes from Goodwill back on. Zip tie. Now we have two different theories. One, we can go back through the living room, down the stairs. At the base of the stairs, immediate to the right is the exit door, because people claim that that door was left open and Bethany was down.
Pause. So Jeff, what we were just talking about when you said what I was asking about the kitchen glass door mentioned in the Brett Payne PCA, you can search it. What Mark B just said, it was it was said early on that the sliding glass door was left open. So even if it's not in the PCA, if somebody knows where Mark is referencing that from, I heard it too. I just can't remember where I heard it from.
Down there, and she said she saw a naked man running away from the house.
Oh,
Naked man theory.
okay, so back naked man theory. So Mark said there are two possibilities at this point. He could exit through the sliding glass door or down through the door. I will propose a third exit route. And I know some people think it's far-fetched, but I don't. I think it's plausible, which is out of Xana's window, down the ladder. Sorry.
In this case, we're going to go up to the car, and I'll show you how the car is set up.
Got the chills. But look at his seat. Like that would prevent the touch DNA from getting into the little compartment.
Here's the pedals.
Look.
And here's the shifter. And this is a removable steering thing.
Well done, Mark.
Moist cloth to clean above the mask, below the bonnet.
I think that's so
First
fun.
off, we have Zaina.
Just a couple notes.
Okay. So just want to share this message that Jeff said. He wonders if the Bago stuff went into the trunk of the Elantra because we hear what sounds like a trunk slam 18 seconds after the sound of the car leaving, 18 seconds before the sounds of the car leaving at high rate of speed. And that timestamp again is the 4 a.m., 21:19 a.m. If you're referencing, if you guys want to go back and look at the Linda Lane. So either way, and again, Mark isn't saying this is exactly how it went. He's just throwing out ideas, for everyone to build off of. Doing that all of that inside the car, plastic, seems risky should you get pulled over. Not illegal, of course. Definitely wouldn't want to be pulled over after the murders. Well, that's true. I wonder how it wouldn't take much to like quickly grab it and like put it, shove it down. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe that detail was left out in the real thing, but something was done. So anyway, I want to bring all this up. Yeah. Jeff said, Mark has done a great job showing that this is a plausible way to have done this. Exactly. So it's not, so that's a 6-minute video that he made. The only thing that wasn't shown was his walk to the car. So he did all of that basically in slow motion in 6 minutes. Another interesting experiment I've seen by another creator is Pluminati and her husband Cletus did an experiment where they just wanted to time it out and see what it felt like if they divided up the time that was allotted for the attack. So they gave 2 minutes for each person in each room. And basically they said by the end of the experiment they were doing, they were just kind of waiting around for the 2 minutes to get up, just reenacting, the going through the motions of what was said in the PCA. This is, it seems like a small amount of time, but it's a lot longer than it seems, according to the experts. When many say, make it make sense, direct them to Mark's video. Yeah. So anyway, I am going to move on to the next segment. We've got a lot to say. So I was going to get to the 911 anomalies before the 911 call. And there's a bunch of things to be said about it, but it's a pretty complex segment. And I have a feeling where it's going to provoke a lot of conversation. I'm going to talk about the autopsies next. We're going to talk about targeting and the autopsies next. And this is, again, kind of all of this was inspired by Medgyn Kelley's video. And the name of this video I'm referencing today is called The Targeted DNA Targeted and Autopsies, Idaho College Murders and Bryan Kohberger, The Medgyn Kelley Show, Part 6. Okay, 38:30. So this is another pretty long segment, but we're going to have to stop and talk about a lot of this because it's a lot.
Certainly not his son. Finally, we got several questions from our audience about the coroner's comments in this case and the autopsies. Some strange statements from her, a lack of information or unclear information when it comes to the bodies. Now, Kathy Mobbitt is the Latah County coroner, and she has been in this position for 16 years. Shortly after the murders, she spoke out to several news outlets. You don't often see that with the coroners, but here she is with NBC News 4 days after the victims were found.
It's pretty traumatic when there's 4 dead college students who have been stabbed to death in one location.
And to local news outlet KREM.
Well, there was a lot of blood. It's a very sad scene.
I don't like, when do you just don't see the coroner speaking out every day in the wake of these murders. Usually they leave it to a police spokesperson. It's a little strange, but also watch how she talks about the murder weapon.
You're really all 4 deaths.
Yes.
Okay. And can you give us the manner of death? Yeah.
I believe that the press release was that they were from a sharp object. So
stabbing.
I will know more after the autopsies tomorrow.
She's citing a press release? I mean, okay, it might just be a person with very little media training, but then why would she be out there? Why did they put her out there?
True.
But her other actions drew some backlash from the family themselves. The lawyer for the Gonsalves family said that Mobbitt had made, quote, personal phone calls to some of the family and released a lot of information that investigators did not know about, end quote. Steve Gonsalves, Kaylee's father, told Fox News that Mobbitt was releasing an inappropriate amount of information to the families, like the specific injuries to the students done through personal phone calls to the families, he said. Again, I haven't heard of that, where the coroner is interacting directly with the families about the specific injuries as a...
I want to go back to this really interesting exchange I'm seeing. I'm sorry, I'm going to pause for a second. There's this interesting exchange going on in my live chat. And Wayne B was asking about the Elantra found in Oregon back in December. All right. And then Jeff B said that they traced it to a woman in Colorado who had nothing to do with the Moscow, Idaho. And then Wayne B said, I heard the Elantra was registered to someone who lived at the 1122 King Road home. It's like nothing else. It's like everything else, what this case mostly speculation. So I'm going to back up for a second. What I heard, and this is so strange. So I heard that this white Elantra, and I believe I heard this on Nika's Neuro Nuggets many months ago. There was some sort of connection between that white Elantra and the owners, the previous owners of the 1122 King Road home, Estes or whatever, Perkins. And then back on X, I had also heard rumors that car might have, I'm not going to actually repeat that one. I'll stop there. But anyway, yeah, it'd be interesting to hear woman in Colorado or owner of the 1122 King Road home.
As opposed to the police or the detective running herd on the investigation. Of course, this information has largely stayed out of the press. We have heard some details, like Kaylee's parents telling CBS in September what Mobbitt said about how Kaylee and Maddie were found. Some of the overall confusion likely came from how the 4 victims were described in the Kohberger arrest affidavit and the inconsistency.
For anyone who has like some sleuthing skills, there's the VIN number right there. Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, and here's Bryan's VIN number. Just use them in a legal way, you guys. Don't pretend to be somebody else. If you're running VIN numbers, don't commit fraud. That's all I say.
Consistencies. All right, so let's walk through some of it. Xana Kernodle's injuries were described in the affidavit as being, quote, caused by an edged weapon. What does that mean? Like, why can't they say knife? What does that even mean? Of Kaylee and Maddie, they were, quote, visible stab wounds. Is that a distinction between an edged weapon? For Ethan Chapin, the section begins by saying he was, quote, deceased with wounds later determined, end quote. And then there's a curious redaction before continuing, quote, caused by sharp force injuries. What's that? Even stranger, in that affidavit, Ethan's section references a date for the autopsy.
Okay, I just want to pause. I know we've been jumping around talking about the Lantra, but this I thought was something I'm glad she cleared up, because I've heard rumors of the second autopsy on Ian. And this is, I don't think anyone's come out and said it. I think people had an inference of it from what Megan's about to say. So I'm just going to rewind it a couple of seconds so you hear the whole thing without me.
Stab wounds. Is that a distinction between an edged weapon? For Ethan Chapin, the section begins by saying he was, quote, deceased with wounds later determined, end quote. And then there's a curious redaction before continuing, quote, caused by sharp force injuries. What's that? Even stranger, in that affidavit, Ethan's section references a date for the autopsy report as December 15th, 2022. And that's more than a month after the murders, and also nearly a month after the initial autopsies were reported to have taken place. What? This confusing inclusion led some to question whether there had been a second, later autopsy. We simply don't know. We don't believe there was.
So I just want to bring up this because I've said this for a while, a long time now. I'm not going to bring up old video and bore you guys to death, but I can bring receipts for this as well. When I first started researching the K-bar, I found that in order for, and a trigger warning, because I'm about to say some things that are, shouldn't be for sensitive ears, but in order to have a wound described the way that Steve G did, a gaping wound, it would mean that it would have to be, it'd have to be long. So in order to do that with a K-bar, if a K-bar is the primary unaliving weapon, it would have to be serrated, or all it could really do, as far as I understand, is a puncture. And then that ripping wouldn't necessarily be able to be done unless it had a serrated edge. And I didn't come up with that information on my own. I went and I looked at some different people who specialized in equipment online, and they talked extensively about the K-bar and how the serration is necessary to make a large wound like that. And I don't think I have to go into too much more detail, but that's just a response to Jeff's question. My K-bar is a version that has a serrated edge. Some don't have that. Could edged weapon mean there were signs of the serrated edge and what I can't talk today. Serrated edge does when used on a person. And I think you exactly right. So when we talk about the gaping or the long wounds, that's from the serration on the knife. I agree with Jeff. And Dee Dee says serrated depth causes different wounds. If you question that, you don't cut your own steak or have a different, you can see, this is Captain Obvious, cut your own steak or have death never butchered an animal. So true. I mean, I'm going to say something kind of also, trigger warning. I watch Bailey Syrian every once in a while. I think she's a really great live streamer and I get a lot of value from her videos. One of the videos she talked about was this, I can't remember the lady's name, but her last name was Shabusiness, and Taylor Shabusiness, that's what it was. And she unalived her boyfriend in the most, unimaginable circumstances. And she tested every knife in the butcher set at her boyfriend's mother's house. And she said that the bread knife was the one that cut human flesh the best because of its serration. Sorry. Hey, Kellys. All right, let's get through this, and then we're going to move to our most detailed segment, which is anomalies before the 911 call.
What we don't know. We also don't know the number of stab wounds on each victim, and typically they would release that. This is relevant to the timeline and, of course, the ferocity of the crime, which the prosecutors will want to introduce. Remember, prosecutors will try to prove that Kohberger committed these 4 murders in a short window of less than 20 minutes on 2 different floors of the house. The defense is going to want to argue it's impossible. And so even the defense may want to point out the number of stab wounds if it was high to try to say, how could he possibly have done this? There had to be multiple people. Who were they? Where are the connections? All of that. Now, these details are sure to come out at trial, but as we told you at the beginning, that trial is not yet on the horizon. Until it is, we expect to get more. There will be more leaks and so on, but between now and then, we'll stay on it. We'll bring you the latest on this shocking and just tragic case. And you keep sending your excellent questions. And
Thanks, Kelly. All right. So, I meant to write sick, and I don't know what my C button's not working. Sorry about the live chat. So, this next segment, we're gonna have to use several different videos to kind of jump around, but I've got them all set up for us. So I'm just setting Medgyn Kelley up at this mark right here. I want this to come out really smoothly. So just with me 1 second. I want to make sure I have all my ducks in a row for this little presentation. I'm just going to put this. I'm going to put this up and just give me a second while I get this ready for you. Thank you. Jodi Arias did it in under 3 minutes. Of course, she had a gun too. So I'm just kidding. 4x3 in 12 minutes. Yeah, 4 times 3 in 12 minutes. I just think the whole thing is plausible. It's just not a normal thing that we understand, so we have to educate ourselves on it. I mean, we don't go through our lives knowing how quickly someone can be stabbed. I've heard that from somewhere as well, and I think it was actually an official source. I can't remember where it was referenced. Thank you. I didn't even think of that. All right. So let's avoid the Jodi Arias rabbit hole, but you're provoking my thought because I made a whole video on this. Jody Arias. So I'm just going to touch base on what he's saying right now. So I made a video on Jody Arias. Actually, it's so interesting. I even feel like maybe showing it to you guys in this live stream. But basically, she was this perfect candidate for death penalty. And even Nancy Grace said in one of the quotes in this video, she's like, if there ever was a death penalty, it was made for someone like Jody Arias. But the lawyers did a really good job humanizing Jody. And people didn't want to sentence her to death after that. They did everything they could. I mean, humanizing someone doesn't mean you make a jury like them. It means that you make them into not so much of a monster. And by nature, humans don't want to see another human die. So anyway, it's a fascinating subject. All right, so we're going to go into our final Medgyn Kelley soundbite, and then I'm going to show you some sound bites from a recent interview I featured on my channel. What the heck? Probably be helpful if I showed you the video.
Heard through a source that this question about possible text between these two came up in the grand jury proceedings. But we don't know whether that's true. We don't know whether it did in fact come up at the grand jury, and we don't know whether in fact there was texting. The police certainly do have their cell phone records, and if there were texts, we're going to know, but we have to wait till the trial. Then there are some questions from YouTube commenters that we...
Yeah, so there's so much I want to show you. So let's go back for a second. So she says that it's Steve Gonzalez that is saying, I'm going to replay that for you.
Called the police themselves. All right, black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. DM described the figure as 5'10" or taller, male, not very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. The male walked past DM as she stood in a, quote, frozen shock phase. The male walked toward the back sliding glass door. DM locked herself in her room after seeing the male, end quote. There's more, of course, in the affidavit, but why the roommates waited until nearly noon to call the police remains a complete mystery. And it's also true, as has been reported, that it was a friend who called the cops, a friend who was at the house because they had been called by the surviving roommates before the roommates called the police themselves. All right, so Dylan was allegedly in a frozen shock phase until the next day. And then what happened? Did she come out and see the bodies? Did she just call a friend immediately? And then the friend came over and saw the bodies and called 911? Why don't we know this chronology? Why would...
So she references Steve, but Steve wasn't the only one who was asking this. The Chapin family was adamant that they knew more from Dylan. And I'm going to show you how I know. Now, this is the only article that I could find. I thank goodness I had saved this somewhere. But this isn't the only article I saw on this. Let me just make sure. Don't have Gia here to make sure you can see it on the screen. So this says, family of Idaho murder victim Ethan Chapin questioned why surviving roommate Dylan Mortensen didn't call the cops after hearing crying and screaming, and claims that she called all of the girls in the house rather than 911. I'm not going to bore you with the whole article because we have a lot to go over here. But the first paragraph, a family member of murdered University of Idaho student Ethan Chapin has questioned why the roommates who survived the slayings didn't call the police. An account believed to belong to Ethan's sister-in-law made several posts online before the arrest affidavit was unsealed for suspected quadruple killer Bryan Kohberger. Now, it says that it was an unconfirmed account, but since then, this has been confirmed. Oh, so right here, they did mark this as verified now. And let me see if you can see that on the screen. Let me see if I can zoom in a little for you. Okay. Oops. So this is the post, and this is verified. Ethan's sister-in-law. Yes, I hope it will come out what Dee heard. Dee supposedly called all of the girls in the house after crying and screaming stopped and no one answered. And she still didn't call the police. She needs to explain herself and her actions. That's not implicating anyone. It's just, Medgyn Kelley is about to go on to say that the speculation is unwarranted when we have people from multiple families of the victims saying that this was a question that they had too. It's not just the public. All right, let's get Medgyn Kelley back up here.
Wouldn't the police make this clear? There's something strange about the whole story and what's been disclosed. We don't know what the truth is behind all of this, but we do expect both of those roommates to be called to the stand at trial. That will be absolutely critical and probably one of the most watched moments of this entire thing. The question of whether the surviving roommates were texting one another during the murders, that's actually very interesting. Or maybe the next morning before or while they were discovering the crime scene. Howard Bloom reported that Kaylee Gonsalves's father, Steve, heard through a source that this question about possible text between these two came up in the grand jury proceedings. But we don't know whether that's true. We don't know whether it did in fact come up at the grand jury, and we don't know whether in fact there was texting. The police certainly do have their cell phone records, and if there were texts, we're going to know, but we have to wait till the trial. Then there are some questions from YouTube commenters that we can put into a category of, we'll call it extreme skepticism. One person asked about reports that the, quote, house was regarded as a drug house throughout the campus, or the fact that there were group chats that knew something happened there well before they even called it in, end quote. Others asked about Chapin's fraternity and the rumors that there was a potential fight there that night that may have been connected to the murder somehow. There's no evidence of that. No evidence of a fight at the fraternity, at least not right now. It appears that those are just unsubstantiated rumors. Ethan's former fraternity brothers spoke out in November about him to KTVB in Idaho. Watch here.
Coolest guy you'll ever meet.
If there were texts, we're going to know, but we have to wait till the trial. Then there are some questions from YouTube commenters that we can put into a category of, we'll call it extreme skepticism. One person asked about reports that the, quote, house was regarded as a drug house throughout the campus, or the fact that there were group chats that knew something happened there.
Okay. Wait, so you heard what she
well
just said.
Before they even called it in. If there were texts, we're going to know, but we have to wait till throughout the campus, or the fact that there were group chats that knew something happened there well before they even called it in.
Okay, so let's stop there, Miss Kelley. So the categorization of people who are on YouTube as extreme skepticism is really offensive, because it would appear that whoever wrote that for Medgyn Kelley didn't actually do their research. Let me show you. It's not extreme skepticism that people knew about this at 10 a.m. We literally have 3 people now who have come out to say it. We have someone who's decided to put their face on record 2 nights ago, the 28th, saying that she saw these text messages at 10 a.m., these Snapchats at 10 a.m. So when Medgyn Kelley says that YouTubers are extreme skeptics, let me introduce you to Kim, WSU Mom Kim. Dun, dun.
Exactly, Daniel. That is actually in hindsight. If I could go back, I would have. My purpose in calling other creators when they said my name or said something about me was to correct something they had said about me that was not correct, or something they quoted I said that wasn't correct. In hindsight, I would have just called you and just told you and said, this guy's saying this, and can we correct that? But I didn't know. And being naive is not an excuse. It's not. It isn't.
Right.
I needed
This
to
is the
be,
wrong
I'm an
soundbite.
adult. I'm an intelligent
Hold on.
adult, educated adult. I should have done it better, and I wish I had. But when people ask,
Okay, so this isn't the exact quote, but we're going to play it through. There are two things I want to show you that she says in this video when Medgyn Kelley suggests that people on YouTube are extreme skeptics. Number one, we have someone on the record now saying that she was looking at her daughter's Snapchats physically at 10 a.m., 2 hours before the 911 call. She also says, she goes on to say, which I paused it because I wanted to set it up before she says it, that she felt the kids might be in some sort of danger. And I just was hoping that this interviewer would have some follow-up questions for her on that. So let's listen.
asked me what I thought and what I felt, yes, I would go down that rabbit hole with them, not even thinking of the consequences. Because for me, I'm just saying, well, maybe, coulda, woulda. But in hindsight, that was my bad. And I can't take it back. If I could, I would, but I can't. So I apologize. And I have apologized and reached out and apologized to the families for things I have misspoken that came out wrong, incorrectly.
Thank you
But
for your memory.
my purpose has never been to be harmful or to be to disregard these families or to make these. Look, if one of my boys brought one of those girls home, I'd be like, ka-ching, we just won the lotto. This girl's a gem. Honestly, I judge none of them. College is for one-offs. College is to party. College is to have fun. And they, in my opinion, did nothing wrong.
Right.
That's what I believe, wholly and with all my heart. And I feel bad that things have been mistaken and could have hurt people. I truly do. And to do it over, I do it over. I don't know if I'd even go on YouTube.
I just want to, I have to pause for a second because I understand that there were rabbit holes and there were things mentioned on, but I never think that anybody strayed from the primary story here, which is your daughter received a phone call at 10 a.m. and 911 was called at 11:58. So I don't really know what they're referencing as far as like rabbit holes and speculation. She still stands by what she said. Planning on showing you this, but after I'm done with that, I'm going to back it up because he tells her, well, he gives her a way out. He gives her an out. He says, maybe your daughter was asleep until noon and she thought it was 10 a.m. when she read it. And then Kim says, no, I know, I picked her up at 10 a.m. Let's keep listening and then we'll rewind it.
To be honest, but I wanted to keep it out there, and I wanted people to know that maybe these kids aren't safe, and I still
Right
feel
there.
that kids might not be safe still. I can't.
What the heck is going on? Let's listen to that again.
But I wanted to keep it out there, and I wanted people to know that maybe these kids aren't safe, and I still feel that kids might not be safe still. I can't, and that was my whole message.
Why does she think the kids aren't safe still? Now that's interesting. I mean, she feels the kids aren't safe still. In this interview, she does also talk about thinking they have the right person. So does she think there's an accomplice? Does she think there's a secondary crime going on? I wonder what she means by the kids aren't safe still. All right. And then we're just jumping ahead so you can hear from her own mouth that her daughter got a Snapchat at 10 a.m. Bear with me. Sorry. There.
Tell everybody the exact moment or time that it happened. Do you have any proof of what time it happened?
First of all, I'm going to start here. Everything I say, I hold myself accountable for saying. I don't lie. I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, I hope I'm wrong. That's how I feel about this whole situation. I would never lie, and I would never insert myself into a situation. I can say that honestly, on a Bible, on a lie detector test. That's just who I am. I'm not going to lie. So I was with my daughter at 10 a.m. So she was awake at 10 a.m.
Okay.
She did not tell me about it at 10 a.m. because this mom would have brought her ass home, straight home with her brother, would have taken
Right.
both my kids, packed them up, and brought them
And-
home. They know their mother.
Right.
So, yes, I believe my daughter knew at 10. I believe they all knew at 10 a.m. I
Okay.
didn't know that the police didn't know at 10 a.m. till the following day when the news came out and said noon, right? Nor did she.
Mhm.
They didn't know either. They figured that obviously the police and parents knew, but
Right.
what she didn't offer the information to me because she didn't want to come home from school. She loved school. That's really truly the information I had. I have more information about who was there in the morning, the roommates or
But
whatever.
that information that you have from who
Yes,
was
I've
there
seen
and who possibly was
Mhm.
there,
I
it's
have
not
seen.
coming. It's not coming from Dylan, is it? It's not coming from Bethany. So
It
whoever.
did not come from
Her
Dylan or
daughter.
Bethany. No,
Okay.
absolutely not.
So whoever it's coming from, it's not from
Right.
the source. So it's just a rumor.
It's
Okay, we're going to stop there. I don't know what the point of this interview is if you're not going to ask about the rumors. I mean, I can ask anybody on the street a question about the case, but I would rather know the opinion of somebody who is surrounded in that atmosphere. And if you are blessed enough to have somebody who's willing to speak, who's close to the case or close to the crime or in that community, why would you not want to know what types of rumors or word on the street is going on? I mean, I feel that is when you're, and we might just have different views on what you try to get out of an interview. But if you have somebody with that valuable of connection to the case and you're doing an interview about the case, I would think that you would want to hear everything they thought of. I don't know why you would avoid quote unquote rabbit holes. I think that's what makes people find the information that they're coming to the interview for. Oh gosh, Mike, no politics. I don't want to lose any subscribers. So Jeff is saying, why haven't we seen any screen grabs from this? And Jeff also said, when there's something important in life, don't forget to take a screenshot. Look, I think that Kim's explanation actually, it hasn't changed. Although Kim uses a lot of words, she hasn't changed the initial explanation here. She found out at 10 a.m. She picked up her daughter, or she didn't find out at 10 a.m. She picked up her daughter. She found at 10 a.m. her daughter had already received Snapchats about it. Her daughter didn't want to tell her at first because she didn't want to leave school. When she did find out that the daughter was texted at 10 a.m., it was noted, but it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't until the next day, 24 hours later, they find out that the 911 call wasn't until noon. That's when Wasu mom Kim was like, what happened? I mean, when the moment happened, it wasn't until 24 hours later that people actually knew there was an anomaly. So at the moment they received those texts, nobody would have thought, oh, I should screenshot this, because I mean, nobody knew there was an anomaly. The anomaly wasn't announced till the next day when on the record they said the 911 call was made at 11:58, and all those kids were like, wow, my WhatsApp message, my Snapchat messages were at 10 a.m. So unless you have your settings saved in Snapchat in your profile to record everything that comes through, those messages are instantly gone. And it's not saying that they're gone forever, that you couldn't have a warrant to get them, which I'm sure the police have obtained if they think this was happening. It's just that they wouldn't be able to go back and find the message. It's gone once they've opened it, as far as I know. I don't use Snapchat anymore, so I don't remember. I have not even opened the Snapchat app in at least 5 years. So But Demon Dog agrees with Jeff. Absolutely. I mean, that would be a great follow-up question for Wasu Mom Kim. Did anybody, did the police take your daughter's phone? Did they want to take your daughter's phone? Yeah, well, Jeff, you're also a photographer. Thank you. Please hit that like button. So Let me make sure I cut Medgyn Kelley right off several times. There's still about 3 minutes left in the video. We haven't gotten to the point yet, but we are talking. There is some stuff about Ethan we want to get to. Let's go ahead and switch this back to Medgyn. I got to learn how to do a smoother transition instead of this full screen.
Others asked about Chapin's fraternity and the rumors that there was a potential fight there that night that may have been connected to the murder somehow. There's no evidence of that. No evidence of a fight at the fraternity, at least not right now. It appears that those are just unsubstantiated rumors. Ethan's former fraternity brothers spoke out in November about him to KTVB in Idaho. Watch here.
Coolest guy you'll ever meet. That's about it right there.
He was really big, funny, happy guy. When someone would walk in the room, like not just me, anybody, he would welcome you into the room. He was always very kind in everything that he did. He always would call me Gussie Gus in his little raspy voice.
Emotionally, always there for people.
These guys at Sigma Chi dealing with a tragedy they never foresaw, I'm sure, when they entered the fraternity and campus. The questions about the shadiness of this house on King Road where the murders took place, as some described it, or even questions that we received about whether a specific roommate may have been the intended victim, all of that, we believe, can be traced back to the way the cops originally talked about this crime. From the very start, the police described the killing.
It isn't beyond the realm of imagination that there was frat boys fighting. I agree, Mike. Hans?
Killings as, quote, targeted.
Based on details at the scene, we believe this was an isolated, targeted attack on our victims.
Even the mayor described it that way in this interview just days after the murders with Good Morning America.
I think from the evidence that exists on site, the conclusion was fairly straightforward that this was targeted, isolated, doesn't pertain to any other location or any other individuals in the city.
It's very strange. How did they know that? On what were they basing that? They said nothing more. This targeted language continued for weeks. One state police spokesperson told the Daily Mail it's possible all 4 victims could have been targeted by the killer. Prosecutor Bill Thompson told a local news outlet, quote, investigators believe that this attack was intended for a specific person, end quote. Why did they keep saying that over and over and over? Moscow Police Captain Roger Lanier said, quote, we've told the public very clearly from the beginning that we believe it was a targeted attack. To be honest, you're going to have to trust us on that at this point because we're not going to release why we think that, end quote. And indeed, they didn't. But by early December, the tune changed. Moscow police put out a statement attempting to clarify a miscommunication, saying, quote, detectives do not currently know if the residents or any occupants were specifically targeted, but continue to investigate. Come on. With no acknowledgement of the number of times you've said that, right, and why, no explanation of why. I get that they don't want to undermine the case at trial, but this is just too glaring.
And I think that it's nice to hear Medgyn Kelley in her mainstream platform calling out someone gaslighting you. Come on. She's going to be the adult in the room and turn to the other mainstream media and say, you just came out so many times telling us it's targeted. And then you're going to come out and pretend you didn't see that? Or with no explanation as to why you changed your narrative so completely black and white. So I guess why I bring this up, and there's only about 30 seconds more of the clip, so I'll start there. I wanted to kind of bring it to you guys and ask you, not from based on anything you've heard, or maybe based on something you've heard, but just if you could think of some things, what could make the policeman think that the house was targeted? So in my last live stream, I kind of talked about how I had heard a forensic expert say one time that they could have found writing on the wall or writing somewhere. And that could go either way. Like it could be from the perpetrator, the criminal, they could have wrote something on the wall, or one of the victims who, these were young people who would have fought for their last breath. And I've heard in other scenarios, people writing a name in their own, again, trigger warning, in their own blood to help name the victim or clarify something or point somebody in a certain direction. Why would they have said so adamantly that the house was targeted? They believed it was an isolated attack, is what the police chief said, and that nobody else was in danger. What would have caused them to say that? And I think that the next two areas I'm really kind of exploring down is I've been given leads that some people believe we're putting Kelley aside because the police wanted to make it public that they were ruling out Kelley. And I've also said that I equally feel that Maddie could have been the target, particularly with some of the things that the Gonzalez said to the court in the court TV interview in October, where they went a little bit beyond inferring that Maddie could have been the target by saying that they had found a social media account they believed to be Bryan Kohberger's that had liked Maddie's picture long before the police ever announced his name. And of course, I know the faceless and how War Dog manipulated social media accounts, but this was almost too fast for them to have done that, I think, according to the account that Faceless gives. The account that had the War Dog video that they made into Bryan Kohberger, it was private for a long period of time while he cleaned it up and got it ready to be the spoof fake Bryan Kohberger account. But Kelley's sister said that it was the second that name was announced to them, it was that minute that they found that account. So I don't think there was enough time for the account to be redone and faked, according to the accounts that I have. So let's just say that is actually Bryan Kohberger's account. It liked Maddie on several occasions. So Maddie could have been the target. And then I've also heard a lot of people saying that there is, I'm not going to say the reasons because I haven't quite done the research yet, but that Ethan could have been the target for reasons that I haven't heard, not the typical frat boy fight club steroid theories that I've heard before, but for other reasons. And another thing I will mention is I know a lot of people don't believe me or want to look at that route, but I do still believe there's a connection to the Cougar Cottage in 3 minutes from Bryan's house off of the WASU campus. Could Ethan have gone to that bar? And we know Xana's sister probably visited her. Xana's sister went to WASU and she probably visited her. Did Ethan go? And so anyway, I'd love to know your thoughts on targeting. What could have made the police say that? That's the question that I have for you. And let's just see if I have anything yet. Wait, hold on. I'm going to start up at we've got Linda Lane conversations going. Okay, so this is what I was saying earlier. So the white Elantra that was wrecked and abandoned in Oregon was owned by Dan Esty. I thought it was Esty, but I guess it's Etsy, listed under the 1122 King LLC. He sold it to a girl in Colorado, and oddly enough, he actually lives in Colorado also. Yeah, okay. That actually, so we were both right. Just that fact alone, the car should have been investigated. That is such a bizarre and odd connection, let alone. Can you explain how you come to those connections with the Elantra? I was on a live that came to the Etsy name, but we couldn't replicate how his name came up. Okay, hold on. Let me get out of this conversation. Okay. I see an article about the wrecked Elantra in Spokane, Washington, connected to Dan Etsy. Could the story of the Washington Elantra have been put into the Oregon wrecked Elantra? Interesting. Hold on. That's what that might be where I'm going wrong. How many freaking white Elantras are like connected to this case though? Like, Well, I'd be happy to show you. However, this information has been scrubbed off the internet. Well, we take your word for it and we'll build off of that. Listen, Linda RN. Okay. And then I did have one bonus footage if I still had people here, and we just got a handful of new viewers. So I am going to show this last segment. I actually have I have two other segments I could show you guys right now. I'm going to show these family connections. This is a really interesting segment. It's a little less than 5 minutes, and it explains all of the family connections that somebody has gone on record saying. So she doesn't dive too deep on she doesn't dive too deep and tell you where the sources are, but I actually have gone back and found out where most of these sources are. So let's hear what Medgyn Kelley has to say about the families. Again, it's a 5-minute segment, and then I'm going to come on, and then I have some stuff on 4chan I'm going to tell you guys about. Hold on.
Therapist. And I can see how it might be tough for someone, let's say the victim of domestic violence, Leo, to start Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill care for life. And if you want caring for these animals to be part of your legacy, speak with your estate planner, because there are tax benefits too. You can grow your estate while letting your love for animals live well into the future. Check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more and speak with your advisor. We call a dog man's best friend for a reason. You can help those who need it most. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. One of our listeners wanted to know why we did not mention that one of Kohberger's sisters, upon hearing about the murders in the town adjacent to where her brother was getting a graduate degree, immediately wondered if he was the guy. What caused his sister to think that? Wrote in our listener. Another wrote in, if Kohberger's sisters were fired simply by association, that's terrible. I'd like to think they'd be that much more of a counselor because they had to see or deal with Kohberger and his struggles and demons. Look, to that latter point, it does feel like guilt by association, but I don't know. The one sister's a therapist, and I can see how it might be tough for someone, let's say the victim of domestic violence, to keep going for therapy from a woman whose face and name just reminds you of one of the most violent, gruesome crimes in recent memory. The whole thing is fraught. It's not fair, but it's fraught. News Nation did report that both sisters were fired from their jobs shortly after Kohberger's arrest. Watch.
I have now learned that Kohberger's two sisters have both lost their jobs since the murders and were let go because of their relationship with their brother, Bryan Kohberger. Kohberger's older sister was a school counselor, and we know his younger sister, at one point at least, was working as an actress. Both of Kohberger's parents are retired, and I'm told the family is in very, very bad shape financially right now, especially because the sisters are now unemployed.
On the first point about Kohberger's sister suspecting her brother, that first question that was raised, it was in fact reported by NBC's Dateline. That was the only outlet that had this info. They had a source who told them Kohberger's sisters did wonder whether it was their brother who had something to do with those murders in Idaho. Oh, watch.
According to our source, investigators learned the following. One of Bryan's two older sisters, home for the holidays, brought up an uncomfortable topic. The sister had noticed Bryan had been wearing latex gloves. She thought it odd. And at some point, the sister, quite loudly, pointed out that at the time of the murders in Moscow, Bryan had lived just a few miles away in Pullman, and that Bryan drove a white Elantra, a car that law enforcement across the nation was looking for. Add that to the gloves, and the sister said she thought the Kohberger family should consider that Bryan might have killed the 4 students in Moscow.
I mean, imagine being this sister, knowing about these horrific crimes, knowing that your brother, who by all accounts was a very, odd, disturbed guy, lived right there, has the same kind of car that they're looking for, and now he's back at home wearing latex gloves throughout the house. I'm sure she did suspect him. And there's probably some willful blindness by a family member to the harsh realities, but somehow it may have penetrated even that. Dateline did report that the sister went on to search his vehicle herself for potential evidence, but did not find any. They also reported that Kohberger's father defended his son at the time, but did Michael Kohberger suspect his son? Remember, it was the dad, Michael, who flew to Washington State to accompany Bryan on the lengthy cross-country trip back to the Poconos in Pennsylvania, just days before his arrest and about a month after the murders. And in a bizarre twist, we actually get to see the father and son on this road trip, not once but twice, in police body cam footage taken during traffic stops in Indiana along the route. We brought you some of this in episode 2, but when you start to really examine the stops while thinking about whether Michael suspected Bryan of the crime, it does cast a bit of a new light on what we're witnessing here. Take a look at this part of the conversation with the police officer.
What did you say about some SWAT team thing? Or
yeah, there was the mass shooting and everything.
Where?
This was essentially
Interesting.
Well, it's horrifying. He's supposed to be the universe, you know what I mean?
It's hard to make out everything that's said, but Michael keeps talking about a scary crime scene back where their road trip started. Not the quadruple murder case in Idaho, but a SWAT standoff that turned deadly in Washington State more recently. On December 15th, just slightly more than a month after the Idaho murders, a man was killed on the WSU campus during a standoff with cops. On the evening of December 14th at approximately 8:30 p.m., police officers responded to a report of a weapon offense. According to the initial police news release, a man in his 30s was threatening to kill his roommates. And the roommates were safely removed, but while Pullman, Washington police officers attempted to speak with the man making the threats, he barricaded himself inside the apartment. Crisis negotiators and SWAT personnel had to respond to the scene. According to the police, quote, after unsuccessful negotiations, escalating behavior, and continued danger to the public and officers, the male was shot, end quote. This happened at 4:22 a.m. That man died at the scene. Now, the man turned out to be 36-year-old Brent Kopacka, a Purple Heart recipient who, according to his friend, was suffering from mental illness after a possible traumatic brain injury from his time in Afghanistan. It's a sad and a strange story, but if you Google Brent Kopacka and Bryan Kohberger, you could wind up down a rabbit hole for days on the internet. And while they lived near each other and have the same initials, there appears to be no connection between these two men, except that traffic stop, sort of, where Michael keeps bringing it up while sitting next to his son, Bryan. He seems uneasy. Maybe he's thinking of the criminology student he raised and the crimes in close proximity to where his son resided. Maybe even hoping that the dead man may have been responsible for that quadruple murder. Certainly not his son. Finally, we got several questions from our audience about the coroner's comments in this case and the autopsies. Some strange statements from her, a lack of information or unclear information.
All right.
When it comes to the...
And we went over all of that in the beginning. And I think that Jeff just kind of hits the nail right on the head. Kind of paraphrasing what I was about to say, that it's interesting that they'd mentioned Kopacka thing, but not the murder in Idaho. But the IDAHO4 wouldn't have caused traffic issues for them as they left the area. Here's the thing, though. It wasn't that day. I mean, I don't know if it would have caused traffic issues because it was on the 15th. And that wasn't, I don't believe it was the same day that they were leaving. I think that's what Medgyn said. If it was the same day, of course, I mean, it's the biggest story probably in that part of the world. So I would bring it up too. If, you know, if you were trying to tell someone the vicinity of where you're coming from, you might mention the massive news story that's going on there. That makes sense. But also what Medgyn is saying as well, maybe it was wishful thinking because he knew something. On the other hand, it is put perfectly and very astutely by Medgyn Kelley right there that although the internet can't find the connection between Kopaka and Kohberger, the only connection we have is the connection that his father made, where he brought up Brent's name in a traffic stop alongside the suspected quadruple murderer. That's a great question. Okay, so here's my take on that. So when we first started this case, I remember a lot of the YouTube creators saying official sources only LE only for our facts. And that kind of dissipated after a while once the gag order came. So a gag order isn't unusual. What's unusual is the amount of leaks. So there's always going to be people leaking information. I think we're dealing with a different type of journalism than we have in the past. So in the past, when there was a crime and there was a gag order or a trial date set and nobody was talking about it, reporters would go directly to the source and they would meet people within the neighborhood and they'd go directly to the place where it happened and they'd find sources. They'd talk to people in the neighborhood. They'd talk to people in local businesses. They'd talk to law enforcement. They'd talk to whatever it is, the coroner. They'd find connections and then they would use those connections for sources. Now, this is actually a good subject. So source information, essentially the media outlet that you're trusting, you're going to have to trust them as far as their sources. That's how it's always been. Because when you have an anonymous source, one of the rules of this anonymous source is that you reveal nothing about your source unless it's to put them into context. If somebody's anonymous, they remain anonymous. The reason why you trust them is because you trust the source they're coming from. So if I am telling you that I've heard from a fairly reliable source that these girls met BK at the Coug near 3 minutes from Bryan's house, I'm not, I tell you the information, it's unconfirmed, it's unverified, but I tell you the extent I feel about it. You have to just determine how well you trust me in order to trust that source. That's just an example. So your source, you never know. You have to find the outlets that have done a good, truthful job before and be faithful and loyal to them and hope, or find a reporter that you like, or find a journalist that you believe doesn't mind telling the truth, even though it's uncomfortable. I can tell you, I wasn't comfortable putting out my investigative theory video saying that I knew people would call me a guilter, and people did call me a guilter. But I tell the truth and I show the information that I see. And maybe I went a little over the top with that one. But once you find someone you trust, you should return to them, because you're going to have to eventually listen to sources, and we never know where they come from. And there's a lot of people who have something to say on that. It sure sounded like they were trying to say that all the SWAT/Kopaka stuff caused them to be behind in their travels in Pennsylvania. Well, the Kopaka stuff happened on the 15th. So I have the traffic stop written down in my last video. Here, I know what date that happened. Hold on. Share screen. So in this video, right, the traffic stop was on, it was the same day. It was on December 15th. So yeah, you're right, Jeff. A lot of people agree with you, CM. It was all corrupted and planned, and they don't care about politics theory. Politics theory, they have their own, they made up, and they are sticking to it. WSU PD identified Wasu Police Sergeant Brett Boyd as the officer who used deadly force in SWAT standoff and killed 36-year-old Brent Kopaka on the 15th. That's a great question. I have to say, I think I actually went to Medgyn Kelley because I heard that she was doing she sounded like an independent journalist when it came to covering this case. And it's really cool to see someone so mainstream act like an independent journalist. So that's why I went to her. I had to see for myself. And I want to also say, once in a while we show our bias, or we show or we tell you where our thoughts are leading, but in general, people should try to be objective. Like, you shouldn't really know if Medgyn is for or against BK. She should be presenting you the information in an objective way. If one BK was involved, sadly, the other BK was most likely involved. Also, don't judge the person, judge their writers when it comes to the MSM. Yeah. And Medgyn Kelley was clearly reading off a script. That's why I was hesitant to like say anything that bad when she was kind of talking smack, because I know although you can tell when it's Medgyn Kelley and she talks like Medgyn Kelley, if you've heard her over the years, but I mean, it's obviously somebody does her writing and researching for her. She can't do all of that. I don't think she can. So if he was killed around noon on the 15th, we could 10:30. The traffic stops on 12:15 between 10:30 and 11 a.m. That's interesting. Somebody has said that statement before, and I didn't know what they meant, and now I get it. It was 10 a.m. It was a bit too early for Thai food, which the father was saying they were getting for lunch. I take what the media says and I investigate what they say to find the truth. If you look into what they say, most of it is not true. And I think one of the most vile things that a news source can do is not necessarily lying to you, but lying to you by omitting information. So not showing you the whole story or telling you a half story. It's almost worse, because when you tell someone because when you mix the truth in with half lies, it is easier for the general public to spread and digest. I don't know, but I do know someone who would have reported on that, and that was Lana over at Truth Transparency, because that's where I saw the footage of Brent Kopacka and that standoff. It was the most bizarre. I don't know if I saw the footage, but she either read through, she showed the body cam footage and read through what happened that day, but it was very weird. Like they went into this one guy's apartment. And when I say guy, I mean like someone who was a student, I believe, at the school. And he let the SWAT team in, and they took his furniture, and they started, this is crazy, they started like barricading the hallway and the door. And it took a long time. And he was like, "Do you guys hungry? Are you thirsty?" And he got them little drinks. He made them little snacks. This is the SWAT team. This kid made this. And so I thought it was kind of funny at first, but after I went back and reflected on it, all I can think is, my God, why wouldn't they have taken this civilian out of danger? Why did they keep the civilian in his apartment? You know, like they like made him an honor. It felt like they were making him an honorary deputy. Trish Regan was live when it happened. I like her too. I'll have to look that up. Wait, hold on. Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. And you know, one thing you can have your opinions about Lana and how she performs, but I have a feeling like if I ever needed someone to fight for me, like I do feel her intent. She tries to fight for innocence, and I think that her investigative work on Dr. Drake really has impressed me. I mean, I haven't watched everything she did, but what she picked up on early on in that case, it's like had me on the edge of my seat when I saw that video. That's the funniest thing I've heard all day. So while we got this, I have my page up. I wanted to show you guys, we were talking about Jodi Arias. I do have that Jodi Arias video right here. I thought it came out good. It did well. It wasn't my most successful video, but it did very well. And then I have something to show you after this. This is a good time to tell you that everything I'm about to say is alleged and simply my own opinion. Do your own research and form your own opinions. Let's begin. As we approach the trial, the mitigating circumstances. So they didn't list these here. I wonder what the mitigating circumstances are. I'm just going to read to you one sentence in step 4, the death warrant. Upon serving the sentence to death versus execution, current firing squad is an alter. So basically at the conclusion, can persuade. Okay, here we go. Just the fact that it could be used can persuade some jurors. So that's just another thing to think about. And now I'm just going to show you some really powerful sound bites.
Relatives of the murder victim broke down crying. The sound of sobbing filled the Arizona courtroom, and Arias looked distressed with a hand to her cheek.
You could hear Travis Alexander's family gasp. You could see them bend over in half, physically bent over, crying out in pain.
HLN host Nancy Grace is shocked by this turn of events.
If you're going to have the death penalty, Jodi Arias is the perfect candidate.
NewsNation senior national correspondent Bryan sat down with the parents of Kaylee Gonzalez, a victim of that crime.
There's 3 other families involved here. We're not the only ones.
Right.
This isn't just our daughter.
Right. Some
and
might
I know
not
that
want to go through the trial.
I know some of the other families definitely would be, yes, like, let's go. Where do I sign? And I understand that 100%. But just because, you know, our opinion is yay or nay doesn't mean that, you know, that's what we get. I've never drove by it. I don't want to. But it's still going to be when they're like, that house is gone. It is going to be very emotional for me. But that wasn't why the emotional side of things. Just like, I don't want to hear that. Like, I want to see this guy die. Like, I don't want him breathing any longer. Because they say, oh, he's living in hell already. No, he's not. Not the hell that I think of. The hell that I think of is agonizing, literally terrifying, agonizing torture day in and day out. I don't care. Latah County Jail is not agonizing.
I knew.
So we're going to begin with this explosive clip from Cluminati's live stream. So listen fast. We'll pause this. So the last thing I'm going to bring up here, I'm not going to keep you guys all day. First off, I can tell where I'm going with the live chat because, and please keep posting this information on Kopacka because there's an angle I want to take on Kopacka that I haven't approached yet. So I know we're going to be talking about that in the next live stream. So stay tuned. We're going to do a lot on Brent. But the other place that we're going in the next live stream for what I have planned for a video is we're going to be talking about 4chan. And I have talked about 4chan in the past. That's why I'm bringing up this video. I want to show you an article, which again, I cannot find. I believe it's been scrubbed. It's either been scrubbed or it's been brought into the, anyway, I can't find it. I'll try and find it in a little bit. Oh, this is not the right. Yeah. This may not be the right video. So that's not the only fascinating thing I wanted to share with you today. So now let's talk about this article that was basically dismissed by most media outlets. And let's talk about why this might be true. Oh, this isn't. So I was talking about the naked perp in my last video. I'll play a little clip here. And I was a little shocked at some of the comments either
and then I'll play the
didn't
other one.
or hadn't heard this theory, or they had dismissed it as tabloid fodder. So let's just listen. What if the man clad in black came out the glass slider door, shed down his clothing, put it in his kill kit, like Steve quoted, the kill kit, and then ran naked around the house out the front? So I think that could be one person just covering his DNA tracks, which we know this was somebody who knew what they were doing as far as containing their DNA. So the article that I am referencing in this clip was written in The Mirror, which is a magazine that is published in the UK. And now I'm just going to read from you a few words from that article. However, one of the surviving roommates, Mrs. Funk, allegedly heard and witnessed things that could exonerate the defendant. Investigator Richard Bitonti, who is working for Ann Taylor, Mr. Kohberger's lawyer, has subpoenaed Mrs. Funk to appear at the accused quote-unquote unaliver's hearing. To the affidavit, she allegedly witnessed a naked man run through the sliding glass door. She lived on the first floor of the home and came face-to-face with the alleged unaliver. She's alleged to have heard and witnessed things that could clear the suspect, Mr. Bitonti argued, and she would be a crucial witness. Mr. Kohberger's lawyer claimed that Mrs. Funk had exculpatory information that is material and necessary to the alleged unaliver's defense. Mr. Bitonti wrote in the affidavit, during the course of the investigation, it became known to me that she has information that is material to the charges against Mr. Kohberger. And according to police, Mrs. Funk found the bodies of the housemates, but she is now disputing the request to appear, as she now lives in Nevada and not Idaho. So let's just make a couple of assumptions about this article. Now, number one, there's a gag order on this case that applies in the United States. This paper is printed in the UK. And unlike the United States, the UK doesn't have the same freedom of speech and freedom of press laws that the United States has. If Mr. Bitonti wanted to stop this article from being published or have it taken down, he certainly could, because he could say that he was offended by it and the paper would be required to respond to his formal request. Let me give you an example. So a recent example that has gained publicity is when Meghan Markle was offended by morning commentator Piers Morgan's opinion on one of his shows. Now, even though Meghan Markle was an American citizen at the time, she was still able to file a formal complaint in the UK. Let me just read you one quick paragraph here from People magazine that reported on this at the time. Meghan Markle made a formal complaint to ITV following Piers Morgan's on-air comments regarding her mental health, which she opened up about during her interview with Oprah Winfrey on Sunday, People reported. Now, I understand that there are a lot of things we have to take into account with this Mirror article regarding BF. However, we do need to consider that this just might be a loophole that the defense for BK has found to leak some information that could help the public image of their client. A major defense loophole. Major loophole that the defense team has found to get some information out there. Sorry, I picked the wrong soundbite, but I wanted to let that play through just because we did talk about the kill kit. We talked about the naked man theory, so I thought I'd just let that soundbite play. But anyway, the intentional soundbite I wanted for you was regarding 4chan. Kylie Jenner video. This is a fascinating article. Let's see if I can tell you where it's from. I'd have to go back to my notes. I want to say I got this out of the Medium, which is a free and a paid subscription site, kind of like Substack. Start right there. And then we'll go to bubbly water. Oh, I have both here. Do I have both? Okay. So what I'm going to do is there are 2 sound bites we're left with. They'll tie this in. This is going to be this Medium article where we talk about the 4chan. And then I'm going to bring up a TikTok soundbite that I used when I was talking about Papa Rogers, because I believe the account is actually referencing Papa Rogers. But in the statement she's making about Papa Rogers, she brings up 4chan as well. So they were gone before Kopaka. So why would they have experienced traffic? To a very recent soundbite posted on Bubbly Waters channel. So this article is titled IDAHO4 Murder Solved by 4chan Users, a deep dive. And we're not going to read the entire article. I'm mainly going to focus on 4chan, the FBI, and something called weaponized autism. The author of this piece is a professional blogger, and this is, as far as I can tell, her only post on the IDAHO4. It was posted before the arrest affidavit, and so that's what makes it even more fascinating. I'm sure that you've heard the criminal psychologist propose that a killer will return to the crime scene. Well, in the digital age, a thread on an anonymous forum about your crime is the new version of that. And then the author shows us a few of the 4chan posts and writes, these are messages that would eventually give the detectives the name of the suspect. Not only did the poster know the details of the crime scene that only the police would know, but he also stated that he was hiding in Pennsylvania, where he was arrested. And now I'm just going to jump around here and we're going to talk about the weaponized autism. Weaponized autism is an expression referring to the impressive capabilities of socially awkward, tech-savvy internet users, typically associated with those who frequent the image boards like 4chan. Don't forget, a 4chan autistic cracked the case. How? There was body cam footage that the cops released from the night of the murders. The footage was taken at almost the same time as the slayings occurred, and at the distance, a white car near the house was noticed, and the cops were at the same time harassing some kids for booze and writing $500 tickets. Someone on the internet, not the cops, said, hey, what's the deal with that white car? Then later, a chick at a gas station nearby had a video of it speeding away. Okay, and this is where things get considerably interesting. So the alleged killer, Bryan Kohberger, was found because his phone was hooked to a Bluetooth in the white Elantra at a Highway 6 gas station. His phone just happened to be on 4chan at the time because he was posting horrific details about the crime on a thread about the murders. He connected through public Wi-Fi because your phone will always search for connections if your Wi-Fi feature is turned on. A cell phone constantly connects to whatever Wi-Fi and cell tower networks it's near. It does this to constantly know its location. So whenever you need a cell tower, you have one. And whenever you want to use Google Maps or whatever, it doesn't take 5 minutes for your phone to jack into the correct GPS network. Okay, so this is one of the lines I really want to focus on. This means that they found the poster after he kept jumping VPNs while posting on the 4chan Idaho slasher thread. The author goes on to say that the FBI most likely owns the 4chan servers, and at the very least, everything posted on there is monitored by the feds and has been for at least the last decade or so. So, if the FBI owns these 4chan servers, though, just really quickly on VPNs. VPNs typically can protect your anonymity online. However, there are backdoor ways to figure out who you are via Wi-Fi and your search history through your ISO provider. Okay, and now I'm going to pull up a soundbite from Bubbly Waters channel that was recently posted. This soundbite comes from a TikTok personality who has about 100,000 followers, millions and millions of views. She doesn't typically post, or she doesn't post at all about the IDAHO4. She's typically music and politics, but that's what makes this clip particularly interesting. It went viral. She was told to take it down. Let's just hear in her own words.
That the posts that were speculated, that they were speculating that Bryan had potentially posted on 4chan Reddit, that in fact is confirmed that it was him doing that, like talking about the murders and stuff like that, and giving out information of how in fact the suspect, Bryan K., how he was in fact arrested, how that information got to police. Because so many tips were coming into the police, this one ended up being a pretty reliable source in that they gave information that nobody could possibly know except them. And I have never even made one video about the Idaho murders. I was pretty content in watching other people's TikToks, just getting like facts and speculation from other creators. So anyway, I really don't care who thought it was real or fake or not. It's just, I fell into the live. I thought it was important information for other people to know, and I released it. So yeah, crazy stuff. Took him down. That's fine. No problem. I'll take him down.
So that was a super interesting soundbite, and I'd love to hear your comments below. So with that, let's just
Okay, well, that was the show that I had planned for you guys today. I think hopefully you found you connected all of the dots that I put together for you. But if you have other questions, if you have comments, please leave them below and I will clarify them. I'm trying to do a live stream every day, so hopefully I'll clarify them tomorrow. I'll keep going. I find enough stuff to present to you each day. So I'll keep going as long as I have the time and as long as I have things to talk about. But I hear a lot of creators saying that they're going to take a break from talking about the IDAHO4 case and they're going to talk about other things. But I just find so many fascinating things to talk about. I don't feel like I need other subjects at this time. So anyway, I really appreciate you spending your time with me. I know you could be anywhere on YouTube right now, so I just appreciate that you chose to be here with me. Thank you, and I hope you have a blessed day. I hope you have a blessed weekend, and I will see you tomorrow. And for my members, I think I might do kind of like a chill out kind of crystals and plucking. We're gonna do crystal meanings and plucking, and I'm hoping to do that later tonight. So I'm either gonna do that later tonight or there'll be a members live stream tomorrow morning before the public live stream. So God bless you. Have a great day.